Do you guys know why you can't swim down in ESO like you could in Daggerfall? Too much salt in the water. Hey guys, what's going on? It's Night Haro here, and today I want to talk about patch notes. So this is the first time I've done a patch note video, and there's a couple things I want to talk about before we actually get into it. If you don't care my preamble about any of that stuff or any of the stuff I'm going to say here, and you just want to hear my thoughts on the patch notes or you want to get the info, go ahead and skip down. Everything's timestamped below. All right, so first thing I want to start off with before we really get started here is I want to show you something. So this is a clip that I actually took from Nefis's podcast, and he interviewed Mike Finnegan, who is he's the lead encounter designer. So he's in charge of 3 teams. I think he summed it up, if I'm remembering correctly, as anything you fight in ESO, someone in his team worked on. So just real quick, we'll listen to it here.
I will say this, and this is a general comment on game development and stuff. Game developers, we are gamers too. Right. And we want to deliver the most fun experience we possibly can. We have a limited amount of time, and we have a limited amount of resources. And it sucks when something comes out and it's not up to people's expectations and it's not up to people's stuff. And we hate it just as much as anybody else does. So we're beating ourselves up just as much as anybody else is. So if nothing else, keep that in mind. If these people we're trying to do our best, and we are doing what we think is best and in the best interest of the players, and will be the most fun experience. And we don't always hit a home run, and we don't always hit it even inside the park, and sometimes we miss. So if you could provide feedback about what you do or don't like in kind of a not death threat manner,
yes, please.
Then we will take it to heart, and we'll try to incorporate that in the future and balance that against everything else that we're doing and stuff. But that's the biggest takeaway too. And not only that, game design, you mentioned it earlier, game design is a small field. We have it seems big, but a lot of designers know a lot of other people. Right. And believe it or not, as game designers, we're rooting for all other game designers. I want to play fun games, and it doesn't matter who makes those fun games. I just want the games to be fun. So the more accepting and the more supportive everybody is about game developers, the better games we're going to get.
And that's kind of what I wanted to say, and just add a human element. When we're going through these patch notes and everything, when you look at all the comments on the forums, and it's not all of them, obviously, and I get that it's the internet and there are trolls and there are people that are just going to overreact or be or treat people poorly no matter what, because they can or something, because they feel they have some sort of anonymity on the internet. Although you would think at this point, 2022, that we would realize that our internet life and our real life are one and the same thing. Internet life is part of real life. And, if you wouldn't treat someone that way in real life, then maybe you probably shouldn't on the internet. But anyways, I get a little off topic here. We want to talk about patch notes. There is one more thing too, though, just to, again, and not to put too fine of a point onto it, I want to show you guys something real quick. You see how it says Zos Gilliam here? Yeah, that's Gilliam the Rogue. So he used to make content for ESO, very, similar to what a lot of us do now. And just looking, you should go to his channel. I highly recommend it, and just listen to the trailer. I thought this was pretty cool because of what I do. And what's cool too, for me, I actually went back and looked at this because it had been a long time since I remember him from back in the day, but had been a long time, and I didn't really remember. Memory is a fickle thing, and it's been years for me. He hasn't made content since he started working at Zos, I assume, and maybe before that. I actually don't know, but he talks about doing some of the same things that I like to do on this channel, which is go really in depth and explain to you how and the why, and not just give you information that you kind of regurgitate and you don't know why you're choosing things you're choosing, but to try to give you more information so you can make choices and think for yourself, and to have kind of a structure for when you want to think for yourself and decide what you want to do. And anyways, I thought that was really cool. Maybe subconsciously I knew that already, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. But yeah, so this is, go check out his videos. This is the person who is writing this. Okay. So with that, let's go ahead and talk about the notes here. So we're going to go to combat and gameplay. We're going to go up a little bit, of course, and it should be up here somewhere. Oh, yeah, there it is. Tales of Tribute. All right, let's talk about balance changes with Tales of Tribute. I think that's what everybody really wants to... Oh, wait, you guys don't care about Tales of Tribute? Well, I'm a Tales of Tribute main now, so... Okay, fine. Just for you guys. Only for you guys, we can talk about the patch notes here. All right, so I actually want to talk about the pre-patch notes before I talk about the patch notes, actually, now that I say that. So I just recommend you go check out those videos and see who the person is who's writing this stuff, so you have kind of an idea where they're coming from. I think that might help to humanize this a bit. So let's go ahead and talk about these pre-patch notes. So this is before the first patch came out. Okay, this is from July 6th. I know I'm going back a bit, but I hadn't covered this. So greetings. It's almost time for the next update, and that means it's time to share some of the reasoning behind the upcoming big shakeups. This update brings a massive slew of balance adjustments all at once to hopefully reduce the need of large, sweeping changes in subsequent updates. Since some of the seemingly minor changes affect a huge part of the game's combat, the main focuses in Update 35 are twofold. Improving accessibility to the game's combat system by increasing the duration of outgoing ability effects, such as damage over time, buffs, and debuffs, and a continuation of the attempt to quell some of the obscene damage production at the high end. Let's start by breaking some of the fundamental realities of ESO today. So they tell us pretty plainly here that what they're going for is they want to improve accessibility, and I don't think that they necessarily mean for those who are disabled or have other limitations. I'm not sure, though. I would actually like some communication, some clarification on that. And I wish that whoever the communications person who was looking over this, which I hope and assume they did, would have made that a little bit more clear and said if it's for both, say it's for both. If it's not, because there's a lot of people that are talking about different things, and I don't know if we're having the same conversation. The other thing is that they're trying to do it all at once so that they don't have to keep changing the game constantly. And I know that this is a huge change, and already the feedback I've gotten from some of you guys is that, I like, stop making changes. Like, it's hard for new people. I just got to build set up or whatever. I will tell you this. The really good news is the sets that were good last patch are going to be good next patch. Okay. There's not that many changes with regards, if any, with regard to those sets and which ones are going to be best in slot. So if you were using something last patch, the patch before it's still going to be good next patch. So don't stress you're going to have to go out and make new gear. You are going to have to change up your abilities, and I know that changing up your rotation, and that can be a huge pain. But they are trying to do this all at once. So because we've been dealing with these changes every patch for the last year and a half, it feels like. I could be wrong on the dates, but that's what it feels like at least. And so they're trying to do it all at once. So hopefully we can get something stabilized. I can make build guides that'll last more than half a patch. And anyways, so they are trying to do that. So that's one thing. And I've heard a lot of people that maybe don't seem to realize this or didn't read or didn't notice this. So it seems like with this statement here about the obscene damage production at the high end, and I could have sworn it was in here, and I don't see it right now. And I just don't want to read through all this at the moment because I'm recording and everything. So I think one of the problems that they're having is that it's hard to design content when the high-end DPS is so high and when the low-end DPS is so low. And so what I think they want to do is shrink that window so that it's smaller, so that it makes designing content a little bit easier. So to do that, they had to do something. And to do, you really only have 2 or 3 choices there. So you can either increase or decrease the top end, increase the bottom end, or do both. And most players have been saying like the DPS creep has gotten kind of out of control, and it's it increased almost like 20% last patch, and so it's maybe gotten a little bit out of control, and it was already high to begin with. Okay, and that does make a lot of things more accessible for people. However, I don't know, there has to be some line you have to draw somewhere, and there has to be some point where you say, okay, that too much is this much is too much, or something like that. And it seems like that's what they're trying to do here. And a couple of ways they're trying to do this is changing weaving so that your light attacks don't scale with other types of damage. So light attacks still matter a lot, depending on your build, depending on your setup. It could be, close to, I don't know, like let's call it like 1/5 of your damage. Could be 20k. So we had someone in our guild that recently parsed, and it depends on what class you're on too. So necros lose I want to say one of the least amount for missing heavy attacks. Night blades would probably be the opposite extreme. We had someone parse on a sork, and they did with light attacks and without light attacks, and this was on the PTS, and was a 20k difference. So it was like 66k to 86k ish or something like that. So significant, right? So that's about 20%, 25% of their damage there. So the other way that I think they want to make the game a little bit more accessible is by having the ground dots, and this is what they said. This I'm just repeating, paraphrasing what they say here, is that they want to make the ground dots last for a lot longer, because right now the way it works is essentially most ground dots last for about 10 seconds. Some last a little bit longer. Some, you have semi-spammables and other things that might last a little bit less. But what that creates is you have 10 abilities and they last for 10 seconds, right? So if you just put dots on every single ability on your bar, you have to be perfect to keep up like 100% uptime on those things. And while that's really fun and makes her like pretty engaging in combat, it's also very difficult to do. And if you miss some of those dots, you might lose a considerable amount of damage. And in reality, that doesn't actually happen. It's a little bit more nuanced. It's considerably more nuanced than that. But just to give you kind of like a rough idea of kind of the thought process here. So they doubled it to 20 seconds. Now, I heard that and I was like, well, that seems like an overreaction. And the only thing that I could think of is that maybe they want to find like some upper bound, like how long is too long? Well, double the current time and see what it comes up with. And I think what that created was a very, in my opinion, very boring play style where you put up all your dots and you don't have anything to do, so you hit your spammable a whole bunch. Now, before, we were only hitting our spammable a couple of times and then going back into our rotation. And that, again, made for a very dynamic and interesting combat. But, if it's your spammable, you kind of want to hit it more than like twice in a row. Sometimes, it's supposed to be your spammable, right? You're supposed to be spamming it a lot. But we don't need to go up to like 15 or 20 times in a row or whatever. Even 10, that's too much, right? Like, 4 or 5 seems like more than enough. But there's some number, that gets the feel right, and it might vary by class. And so that seems reasonable to me. So this was a bit much. The things that I found out, and I have mostly parsed on a Necromancer and on a Warden. Those are the main 2 classes I've parsed on as of this moment on PTS, and trying out some of my builds, just other things, changing up the builds, rotations, whatever. And one of my major feedbacks there's a couple. So one is that, the timers just feel too long. You're hitting your spammable too much. It's a little bit boring, and it's not as bad as I thought it would be actually in content. I ran VKA. I live streamed it, so it's up if you want to see it. It was a rough run. I don't know if it's that interesting to watch. We were struggling for things unrelated to the PTS. We had some people that had never cleared it before. And then we had some people that were very experienced. So it's a mixed group, and we struggled some. But my point is that, like in content, it didn't feel as boring because you're doing other stuff. You're looking around, you're seeing what's going on. However, it still felt a bit too much. And, after a while, once you get used to a piece of content, you get used to your group, you guys are doing the same thing over and over again to get more fine-tuned. That's when you would start to notice it more too. And even if you're not there now, you will get there, I promise. And you don't want it to be boring when you do, right? Like that's kind of disappointing. Like, hey, I finally got a good rotation and everything, and now it's boring. Another issue that I had is that some of the classes, it felt like they lost their identity. And what I mean by that is some classes, the best parse setup was not really class specific. You could do it on several different classes, or maybe you swap out one skill or something like that. Also, a build you could do on pretty much any class is put like nine dots and then one spammable, and just kind of do that rotation. And some of the dots last for 30 seconds or even longer. So again, it lacked any kind of dynamic rotation or just kind of interesting dynamic combat. So one of my criticisms, and one of the things that I would like them to address that they still haven't, and we'll get to the future patch notes, is I would like them to talk more about I would like them to fix the class skills. I want a reason to use my class skills. If I'm a necromancer, creating a graveyard, these tombstones that pop up out of the ground, thematically feels really good. Using a scythe sometimes. It doesn't have to, and I'm just picking skills here that are cool. They're very necromancy, right? That's really cool. Looks like what you would see on a necromancer. It's a scythe, right? Like that's perfect. Throwing the flaming skull or the poison skull, it looks really cool. I would like for all classes on a Nightblade, Swallow Soul, right? Or if you're going to use surprise attack, I would like to see on all classes, Warden for their shocks, that these class abilities and there be a distinctive play style to each class. Now, sure, should you be able to play with whatever? That's the idea is, play whatever you want. If you want to play a Warden, but don't use a lot of stereotypical Warden skills, you can do that. However, I would like there to be a reason, and to me, it makes sense if the meta is like, oh yeah, if you're on a Warden, using Warden skills will be like one of the best setups or the best setup. And that will get more people to play it. And it's like, okay, this class now has an identity, because if everybody can play everything, then what's the difference between using a Sork or a Warden? If it's class passives only and you're not using any class skills, that's not very fun or interesting. So, and I think most people would agree with this. I'm just pointing it out. So I think that's one of the problems. I would like to see, however they want to do that. I think the simplest and easiest way is to make class skills do cooler stuff, do more damage, have synergies when you work together. For the Warden, their animal companion abilities used to give you a increase to damage. And so just total with all abilities, while you're on that bar, it increases your damage by I think 2% per skill. And it gave you incentive to put Warden abilities on your front bar and to use Warden abilities. Even like Betty Natch, you could put it on your front bar. That's what I have on my Brittleton build. And I think they could do that exact same thing. For a Nightblade, having Path, you know what I mean? So Crystal Frags for a Sork, or you get the idea though. Having those kind of things I think could really help. And one of the things that I was kind of concerned about. The other thing was the dots were just too long and being kind of boring. I really wanted to see a little bit of variation in the total time that a skill ran for, so that maybe if I want to run skills that don't last quite as long, maybe they do a little bit more. So maybe I get, and this is a number too that's kind of come up a lot, 80%. 80% is what most people are like, what, if I want to do an easier build, or I want to do, something off meta, 80% of like the maximum effective damage seems to be what people on both sides that I've talked to and have independently come up with, So if I want to play an off meta build, but where I do heavy attacks or whatever, if it can do 80% of the damage that everything else is, I think most people, the person who's doing the meta build is like, yeah, that's too much of a DPS loss for me. It's 20k right now ish, a little bit more. And the person that's doing the heavy attack is like, yeah, I get that this is a more simple rotation, but this is what works for me, or this is what I can do. So 80% is fine. The other thing I will point out with some of the simpler builds too, is your effective damage in content will often be high and higher. So you'll be close to your theoretical max more often in combat because your abilities and because the rotation is easier. So one person, if I'm new and I'm doing this very complex dynamic rotation build that has a higher theoretical damage, I might actually do worse than someone who is just doing a heavy attack build. And, you see this a lot in Sunspire with like Stamplars, just using jabs or whatever. I think like that's a little bit frustrating to some extent, but I think by and large, that's an okay thing. I think that's a good thing. And it's like, what, in the high end groups or whatever, you will want to change that. And if you are willing to work and put the time in, you will get more damage out of this eventually as you get a little bit better. And if you're like, I'm a casual player, I'm never going to be putting that much time in. If I decide to later, then I'll do that. Okay, I'll change up my build. But for now, this works. 80% seems like a good number that a lot of people agree with across the board. So hopefully that's feedback that I would like to give to Zoss. So maybe someone else, if you hear this and you can pass that along in forums and other things, we can get the word out a little bit. But that's just a number that's come up. So, here's the deal. Yeah. So that we've got the light attack changes. We got the changes to the total time. I think they could also do, on the same note, another thing that I would like to see is that myself and a lot of other people, right, we are constantly trying to use Maelstrom, or I'm sorry, not Maelstrom, arena weapons like constantly. And we would really like for the arena weapon builds to be viable. And I think that they have come back a little bit more now. So I'm using one on my Brittleton build. And I think that we would just like to see a little bit more of that. And I would like a little bit of attention given to that. So with the Warden build that I have, I use the Dragonstar Arena weapon. So I use the Master's Ice Staff to modify my Frost Reach ability. And that applies brittle and stuff like that. That is one of the things they said they wanted to change, is these buff up times and stuff like that. And I think that Skinny Cheeks or someone else has already pointed this out, but they didn't change that. So whenever you use that arena weapon, the buff still only lasts for 4 seconds, and it makes it where you have to hit the skill every 4 seconds. And it doesn't do a whole lot otherwise. And right now it's making, on the PTS, it's making for a very complex rotation that gives you very little benefit. So I would love to see that doubled, like to 8 seconds or something like that. That to me would make a lot of sense. Or better yet, to have the duration of that last the same time as the dot does. But anyways, that might be overtuned or whatever. But I think things like this and making arena weapons where you can, that adds a lot of variation to your build and can make for really fun builds. And again, even if they're not meta, I would like to see some of them be meta so that we would have a reason or very close to it. But if you want to say, you know what, no, it's never going to be meta, 80%. 80% is the number I think you should probably shoot for. That seems to be what everybody is happy with. Even if you're doing an off meta build, maybe it's easier. 80% of the effectiveness of the best in slot, I think, would go a long way. So anyways, with that, let's actually go ahead and look at, and I know I'm not looking at the patch notes here. I'm going to look at the recent changes here. So this just came out earlier today, and it's also from Gilliam again. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and read through this since it might be new to everybody. Greetings, everyone. We'd like to update you all on where we're at in the PTS feedback and our plans of action. Firstly, we would like to thank everyone who has taken the time to go through the changes and hop on the PTS to get hands-on experience before submitting their feedback. People were just complaining, and this happens every patch, I know, but like people get upset about things they think might be happening or ways they think it might happen without actually trying it out. And it's like, wait and go check it out before you get upset. It seems kind of crazy. But anyways, the sheer amount of data and in-game application has helped us tremendously to hone in on the problem spaces that the larger sentiments have pointed out, and has also given us a better idea of how to isolate and tackle these problems. Let's quickly go over the main themes we would like to improve. So 2 things here. One is he says, let's go over the main themes that they would like to improve. And then 2 here is that he's saying that this isn't, these are the main themes. This isn't everything that they want to change. Just keep that in mind. The other thing I want to say is just what he just said here, about people actually getting on the PTS. I just want to point out that the people who do that oftentimes are pretty serious end gamers. They're people who've been playing the game for a long time, and you know what? It's limited, right? So you have to have hard drive space, you have to have the time, you have to have the inclination, right? So it's a subset of the community, and I just want to say to those who can, and I know this is, again, 90%, probably more, is the serious in-game community people. It's not everybody, but anybody who's got on the PTS and has helped people who ran, we ran a trial, other people have ran trials. Thank you. And we really appreciate it. It really helps. And obviously Gilliam is saying this, so of course it's true, but from just a more casual person, we do appreciate this, and at least those of us who know. And I want to take a moment to acknowledge that, hey, these are the in-game players, so those who are casual, we're all one community, and so it's cool that we can benefit, and it's really nice, and we should express a little bit of appreciation for those that can and do spend the time to go on and check out the PTS, to provide good feedback and say, hey, here's some really problem areas, here's things I think that are good. Obviously, Skinny Cheeks has done a video on this. I highly recommend it. Code made a really good blog, and Skinny Cheeks highlights it and I think reads through most of it on his video, and I thought that was really good. But not not just those people, okay? It's anybody who goes on there. And if you're a casual player and you have the time and the inclination and the hard drive space, the PTS is like 100 gigs or something, a little bit more, a little bit less, I'm not sure. It's basically downloading the game a second time. But if you can and you can go on, getting feedback from the average casual player is probably extremely hard on the PTS, and I don't know how much feedback they get. I tried putting together a normal trial, and I wasn't able to get the people for it. I was trying to get people with normal veteran trial, non-hard mode, and wasn't quite able to get the people that we needed on PCNA. I did run with another group, and I pulled some people to help fill that group, and that worked out well. But that was ran by Purple Button Horde with Walnut, and I really appreciated that he did that, and it was good to get to join that and be part of it. But we could use probably some more of that. But anyways, I just want to acknowledge the in-game community and say, hey, thanks you guys. I know that you're the ones who are doing a lot of this stuff, and that us more casual players and maybe to the average casual person, I'm not. I do play this game a lot, whatever, but we appreciate it. That's all I want to say. So they said there's 3 main issues they'd like to address for the next patch. And I don't want to read through all this. So the main thing is that, I'll paraphrase here, is that area of effects, everything was ticking every 2 seconds. And what they're going to change is that your area of effects, and this will include healing, will tick every second. And this will keep the fear. The fear was that people would die because they wouldn't get healing every second and they would take damage every second or something from an ability. And I think that's a very valid complaint. And you don't want people just randomly dying in a group when you've dropped all your HOTS and everything on them. So they're going to make AoE damage and AoE healing tick every second. And then if something applies to a particular target and it's on them wherever they move, so it's not an AoE, those things are still going to tick every 2 seconds. The other thing that they're going to do is they're going to make the ground AoEs, the things that stay in place, they're going to make them do the damage that they were pre-patch. And so they're going to do a lot more damage. And they're also going to have the timers that they had before patch, or maybe a little bit extended, but I think they said the same. Yeah, they said the same. So that's going to be cool. And I think what this is going to help do is make the rotations a bit more dynamic, where if you want, you can choose something that is ground based. You have to place your dots in the right spot. The tank needs to hold the boss there as much as he can. And those things, your rotation is a little bit tighter because things won't last as long. And then you can intersperse in these longer dots if you want. And sure, there will be some DPS loss, but honestly, I think it's less than the 20% that I'm suggesting with the 80% effectiveness. And so it's really cool. And you can kind of mix and match based on the situation, based on your skill level, based on your level of sweat, how intense you want to be about it. And I think that's really cool. So that's the main changes they're going to make. Towards this end, what I've already mentioned is like, I would like to see the class skills have a little bit more of an identity. I would like them to typically do more damage. Sure, I'm fine with a Destro staff ability or a two-handed sword ability or some, maybe a fighter's, whatever. I'm fine with some of these other abilities being very good or almost as good or equally good, but maybe not having the secondary effect. So like a Nightblade Swallow Soul heals you. Okay. It's a super effective heal and it's your spammable. That feels good as long as that does just as much damage as like the as Silver Bolts from the Fighters Guild skill line. And I might be convoluting the name, but it's a crossbow. And if that does similar damage, that's okay. But I would really like a reason to want to use my class spammable and my class abilities. And that's one of the things that I hope that this will address some. So for a lot of things, they also mentioned Warden and Sork, that they had changed some things, and I would agree on the Warden. I haven't tried the Sork. It kind of did make the class feel like it lost that identity because things were lasting too long, and it for a Warden, it didn't feel like your shocks was a semi-spammable. It felt like it was just another dot, and that didn't feel real good. But for a lot of these abilities, these class abilities, so for Path, if you're on a Nightblade, shocks on a Warden, or your Boneyard if you're on a Necro, a lot of these things, and you could go on and on, right? But a lot of these things are AoEs already, and so they're class skills, but they're going to go back to the old way of doing it. So in theory, it should more highlight them. But again, I still think things like Debilitate, which is a class ability of of a Nightblade, but it's a single target dot. I would like all these things to still have a reason to use it. And then you can use things like the Mage's Guild skill line where you have structured entropy or degeneration. Those are two different morphs of the same skill that are basically the same. One heals, one does secondary effects. But, I would like the Mage's Guild skill line and the Fighter's Guild skill line to be a little bit secondary in most situations. Maybe they can do just as much, but I would really like to have a reason to use my class skills and to want to use my class skills often. And you know what? If I lose 0.3 or or not 0.3, if I lose like 3 to 5% DPS or a couple percent per skill or something, if I decide to use Fighter Guild, skills and Mage's Guild and Destro staff, I'm okay with that. Like that feels good, but I would just like it to be a little bit better and give me a reason to use my class skills. So let me just double check, make sure I didn't miss anything here. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all I got. I have seen mixed reports about this already. A lot of people still have concerns. I don't know if their concerns are the same as mine. I imagine they're probably different. But I've also heard some people say, you know what, this fixes 90%, 99% of my problems, most of them that I had with this patch. And so it feels like we're in a good place. And I think that's really cool. So, yeah, and I just want to say that, there's been a lot of uproar about this and a lot of people, quite frankly, overreacting and not treating the developers like they're people. If you have a favorite creator that you watch or you listen to, and you think about how people treat that creator, did people harass them? Did people treat them poorly? Or what if they did? You probably wouldn't like that. People are people. Okay. And these developers are people. Go watch Gilliam's post. Go check out Nefis's his 2.5 hour long interview with Mike Finnegan, and go look and realize these guys are people, and they're trying to they want the game to be fun too, and to treat them with a little bit of humanity and a little bit of respect and a little bit of kindness. And you know what? Even if you don't feel that way, this most recent release, we got the best trial we've got in the game so far. I was memeing on the card game because I was frustrated that they still haven't fixed some bugs, and I still am. But the card game is friggin' really good. It's really good. They could make an app out of that. It could be its standalone game. That's how good it is. And they included that in the chapter. Plus all the quests and all the normal stuff, all the skins and everything else you can earn in game with a chapter. The balance changes, the changes to being able to use Stam and Mag and be able to use hybrid setups, right? I was skeptical about that. And I think other people were as well. It worked out great. They've been doing a really good job, okay? So let's give them a break. Let's give them feedback, but let's also realize, man, they've been doing a good job, and let's give them a pat on the back every once in a while and acknowledge that and say, hey, we appreciate what you're doing. And when we do want to give feedback, let's do it in a constructive way so that it can be helpful and so they can actually hear it. They don't have to weed through the comments where someone's, honestly being kind of crazy. I know it's the internet and I know it's going to happen, but let's try to be constructive and try to treat everybody with a little bit of dignity and a little bit of respect, just like we would want them to treat us, our friends, other creators, people we know. And I think if we can do that, I think ESO is in a great spot, and far from dying. I think ESO is about to enter its golden age, if I'm being totally honest. Well, with that's it for today, guys. Let me know what you think about this patch. I am curious. If there are concerns that you have that I didn't cover, I would love to know what they are. So drop that in the comments below. And, I'll probably be doing more. No, I will be doing more when the actual patch comes out. So I can potentially include that and maybe give me a chance to look and test some things out and give my feedback as well. So anyways, that's it for today, guys. Thanks for watching.